There is a moment in sport, rare, almost mythological, where someone does something so far outside the boundary of what's supposed to be possible that the people watching don't cheer. They go quiet, not the quiet of disappointment, the quiet of witnessing. The quiet that happens when your brain is trying to process something it doesn't have a category for yet. That moment happened on a Tuesday afternoon in Birmingham, and the man who broke the silence wasn't even supposed to be there. Carlos Alcaraz, four-time Grand Slam champion, one of the most decorated players in the history of tennis, had no reason to be sitting in that stadium. He was recovering. His wrist was resting. His coach had told him to stay home. And yet some instinct he couldn't explain, made him get on a plane that morning, take a seat in the player's box, and watch a match that would change not just his understanding of tennis, but the entire language the sport used to describe greatness. When it was over, he sat down in front of a microphone and said 2 words. Just 2 words. Words he had never used about Federer, never used about Nadal, never used about Djokovic. Words he had never used about anyone in 30 years of professional tennis. And the moment he said them, the entire world stopped scrolling, stopped arguing, stopped everything, and just listened. But here's what nobody ever tells you. The story doesn't start in Birmingham. It doesn't start with Alcaraz or the press conference or the 2 words that broke the internet. It starts years earlier, in a place most people have never heard of. With a 12-year-old girl hitting a tennis ball against a cracked concrete wall because she had no one to practice with, no coach to guide her, and no reason, at least not one that anyone around her could see, to believe that any of this was going anywhere. Alex Eala grew up in the kind of place where talent goes unnoticed, not because it isn't there, but because no one is looking. The courts were municipal, chipped at the edges, net posts slightly crooked. Her racket was secondhand. Her training videos came from a phone with a spiderweb of cracked glass across the screen. The people around her loved her, genuinely, warmly. But love and belief are 2 very different things, and what they gave her was love. The belief she had to manufacture entirely on her own. What's strange is that it wasn't even hard for her to believe. Not because she was arrogant, because she could feel something when she played that she could not feel anywhere else. A kind of clarity. A kind of knowing. When she was on a tennis court, the world made more sense than it did anywhere else, and she trusted that feeling even when everyone around her was quietly, kindly, waiting for reality to intervene. The first coach who watched her play seriously stopped the session after 4 minutes. Just stopped it. Walked onto the court without saying anything. The other kids thought someone was hurt. He stood in front of Alexa and he said, "Where have you been?" 4 words. She was 12 years old. She didn't understand the weight of what he was asking. She told him her address. He meant something else entirely. He meant, how does someone play like this without anyone having taught them? How does a girl from nowhere, with no resources, no program, no pedigree, produce something that looks less like learned skill and more like an entirely different relationship with the game? He didn't have an answer that day. Nobody did for a long time. Her junior career was, by any external measure, an anomaly. The results didn't follow the expected curve. In sports, talent usually reveals itself in a particular pattern: gradual, improvement, occasional breakthrough, steady calibration. Alexa didn't follow that pattern. She improved in ways that felt less like growth and more like arrival, as if she had already been great and the rankings were just slowly getting the news. Coaches who analyzed her game came back confused. She had no obvious weakness. Not a technical one, not a mental one, not a situational one. Under pressure, she didn't crack, she clarified. In long rallies, she didn't tire. She found new solutions. In losing positions, she didn't scramble. She reconfigured. The word people kept using, in whispers, in private, was uncanny. And then she turned professional, and the whispers got louder. By the time Birmingham 2038 arrived, Alex Eala was not a secret anymore, but she also wasn't yet the story she was about to become. She had wins, significant wins, and a growing reputation among the serious tennis community as someone genuinely unusual, genuinely worth watching. But the mainstream hadn't fully found her yet. The casual fan knew the name, but not the weight behind it. That was about to change in the most dramatic way possible. The final was set against the third-ranked player in the world, an opponent who was not just talented but formidable in the specific way that dismantles players: physical, relentless, someone who made you feel the match in your legs and your lungs before she made you feel it in the score. Every analyst who previewed that match used the same word: battle. They were wrong. The first game lasted 9 minutes. Alexa won it without dropping a point. The second game lasted 7 minutes. Same result. By the third game, something had shifted in the EE Stadium. Not the kind of shift that comes with a great rally or an unexpected winner. Something deeper, quieter. The crowd had gone from excited to attentive in the way audiences go attentive when they sense they are watching something that matters, something that will be worth remembering. The third-ranked player in the world was doing everything right. That was the part that was so hard to process. She wasn't losing because she was playing badly. She was playing correctly, tactically intelligently, physically impressively. And she was being dismantled anyway, as if correct wasn't a category that applied to this particular match, as if the usual rules had been quietly suspended. In why? The player's box. Carlos Alcaraz leaned forward, his elbows dropped to his knees. His coach noticed, looked at his face, looked a second time, stopped looking at the match and started watching Alcaraz instead. Because what was happening on Alcaraz's face was something his coach had never seen in 30 years of working with elite athletes. It wasn't admiration. Everyone admired great tennis. It wasn't even respect, which was deeper but still familiar. What was on Carlos Alcaraz's face was something closer to awe. The specific, quiet awe of someone watching a thing they cannot explain. There was a moment in the second set, a single point, that the people who were there still talk about years later. Alexa was deep behind the baseline, several meters behind where any shot should have been attempted, in a position where the geometry of the court made a winner essentially impossible. Her opponent knew this. The crowd knew this. The physics of the situation were unambiguous. And then Alexa hit a backhand. Not a desperate backhand, not a hopeful swing, but a precisely calibrated backhand that clipped the far sideline with such exactness that the line judge flinched before she made the call. The crowd didn't cheer. They made a sound that wasn't quite anything. A collective exhale with something like disbelief inside it. And in the player's box, Carlos Alcaraz sat back in his seat, very slowly, and said something to his coach that his coach would later describe but couldn't fully explain. He said, "I don't understand. The match ended 6-2, 6-3. Those numbers are the least interesting thing about what happened." Alexa lifted the trophy, her 5th Birmingham title, 3rd in a row. The yellow shirts in the crowd, her supporters who had traveled from everywhere, waved and chanted, and her name became a rhythm, became something closer to a piece of music than a word. She cried, as she always cried with the trophy, every single time. Shoulders shaking, hand over mouth, like the victory still surprised her, like she was still that girl on the cracked court who wasn't entirely sure this was going to work. 15 minutes later, Alcaraz sat down at a table he hadn't planned to sit at, in front of a microphone he hadn't planned to speak into, because a journalist had asked him in a corridor and he had said yes on instinct, because something from the match was still moving through him and needed somewhere to go. The journalist asked the expected question. Alcaraz paused. A real pause. Not hesitation. Searching. Searching for words that were accurate, that actually carried the weight of what he had witnessed. He said, "I have watched tennis my whole life. I have played against the best players in the world." He paused again. And then he said it. He said, "Alex Eala is God-gifted." The room didn't react. The room held. He kept going. He said there are players who are coached into greatness and players who work into greatness, and both of those paths are real and valid and deserve full respect. But what Alexa has, he said, is something underneath all of that. Something that existed before the coaching, before the work. The way she sees the court is not a skill she learned. The way she anticipates is not a pattern she studied. I have never said this about any player. Not Federer, not Nadal, not Djokovic. I am saying it now because it is true. The room exhaled. By the time someone thought to check, the clip already had 2 million views. By the time Alexa was told about it in the locker room, still in her match clothes, hair still damp, it had 4 million. Her coach held up his phone and pressed play. She watched it once without reacting. He played it again. On the second viewing, she broke. Not gracefully. Not photogenically. The real kind of breaking. Shoulders forward, hand over mouth, sound. She was trying to keep in, not fully staying in. She said later, that what undid her wasn't the praise. It was the specificity. It wasn't someone saying she was talented. It was someone who had seen everything, who had played against the greatest human beings to ever hold a racket, saying, "I see exactly what you are, and here is the precise word for it." She said, "I am just a girl who loves tennis." And for Carlos Alcaraz to say that about me in public, without anyone asking him to, just because he believed it was true, I didn't know what to do. With that, the tennis world, entirely on cue, fractured into argument. There were the believers, who said, of course, finally someone said it. There were the analysts who pushed back, who said that every element of Alexa's game could be traced to specific technique and accumulated hours, that God-gifted was a beautiful narrative and a lazy explanation. There were former champions who said Alcaraz was generous but imprecise. And then there were the few people whose counter-argument was the most interesting of all, who said that the argument itself was the proof. That the fact Alexa's game kept resisting explanation, kept refusing to be fully mapped and categorized, was itself the evidence. That her gift wasn't in any single component, but in the inexplicable completeness of everything together. Alcaraz was asked to clarify 2 days later. He said, "I think people want me to soften it. To say what I really meant was she's very talented and works very hard. That is not what I meant. I meant exactly what I said. She has something that cannot be taught." The foundation was already there. The raw material was already exceptional. And then he said something that silenced the room again. He said, "I have weaknesses. Every player I have ever respected has weaknesses. You find them, protect them, work around them. Alexa does not have weaknesses the way the rest of us do. Her game is complete in a way mine never was. I was a 4-time Grand Slam champion. I am not saying that to diminish myself. I am saying it to communicate the scale of what she has." The years proved him right in ways that moved from remarkable to historical to something the sport didn't have adequate language for. First Grand Slam at Wimbledon that same year. Second, the following season. Then a third. Then more. The records didn't just fall, they fell in a way that had a particular quality to it. Not the feeling of a record being broken, but the feeling of a record finally catching up to a truth that had been obvious for a while. By 10 Grand Slams, the conversation had shifted from whether she was great to trying to understand the specific shape of her greatness. By 15, the comparisons to previous legends started feeling insufficient, not because those legends were anything less than extraordinary, but because Alexa kept exceeding the frame. She remained, through all of it, deeply uncomfortable with the label. She brought it up herself, unprompted, in interview after interview, as if she needed to correct a misunderstanding before it hardened into myth. She said, "When people hear God-gifted, they sometimes think it means easy, that it arrived without cost. I want to be clear. Every single thing I have achieved cost me something. Early mornings, late nights, injuries, losses, moments where I genuinely did not know if I could continue. The gift opened a door. Hard work walked through it. Love of this sport walked through it. Take either of those away and the gift means nothing. And then she said the thing that became, in its own way, as famous as Alcaraz's original words. She said, maybe everyone has a gift. Maybe it doesn't look like mine. Maybe it has nothing to do with tennis. But the work is what makes the gift into something real. The gift is just the beginning. The 20th Grand Slam landed differently than any of the others. Not just a number, a completion. The feeling of a story arriving at exactly where it was always going. The ceremony was in Birmingham. Where else could it have been? And Carlos Alcaraz was invited to speak. He was older. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there in 2038. His playing career behind him. He walked to the microphone, and the crowd, already emotional, fell quiet in that specific way. Crowds go quiet when they know they're in the presence of something worth being silent for. He said, I remember sitting in the player's box in 2038. I remember watching something I could not fully explain and feeling something I had not felt in 30 years of tennis. He looked at her. He said, 20 Grand Slams. Records that will stand. For a generation. A legacy this sport will be talking about long after both of us are gone. But that is not what I will carry. What I will carry is that Tuesday. The match. The feeling. The moment I knew I was watching something that only comes once. He wiped his eyes. He said, Alex Eala is God-gifted. She always was. She always will be. I said it in 2038 and I will say it today, and I will say it every time someone asks me until the day I can't say anything anymore. When she finally reached the microphone, she held him for a long time first. The kind of hold that carries more than words can. When she spoke, her voice was unsteady but clear. She said, You said 2 words in a press conference in 2038, and you changed my life. Not because of the praise. Because of what it felt like to be seen, truly seen, by someone whose opinion I respected more than almost anyone's in the world. You didn't have to say it. Nobody asked you to. You said it because you believed it was true. And saying true things out loud when nobody asks you to, that is its own kind of courage. Its own kind of gift. She looked at him. She said, You are God-gifted too, Carlos. Not just as a player, as a person. And I love you for it. The chant started, somewhere in the back of the crowd, and moved forward like a tide. Her name, rhythmic and rising, turning into something larger than a word, turning into everything the crowd was carrying and couldn't say any other way. It filled the stadium. It moved out into the Birmingham evening, and the 2 words that had started all of this, the 2 words spoken into a microphone by a man who had seen everything and was still moved enough to search for honest language, those 2 words were everywhere again, the way they had been in 2038, the way they would be for as long as people talked about this story, which would be for a very long time. Because here is the truth that outlasted every argument, every analysis, every attempt to reduce what Alex Eala did to something explainable. The 2 words were never really about tennis. They were about what it means to see someone, fully, honestly, without agenda. To look at another human being and say, I recognize what you are and here is the word for it, and I am not going to stay quiet about it just because nobody asked. That is what Carlos Alcaraz did on a Tuesday afternoon in Birmingham when he had no particular reason to be there. And that one act of honest recognition, 2 words into a microphone, became the frame through which an entire career was understood. Some players are coached into greatness. Some work into greatness. And some arrive already carrying something that all the coaching and all the work in the world can shape and direct, but never, not once, could have created from nothing. Alex Eala had that something. Carlos Alcaraz saw it, he said it. And tennis, for one extraordinary moment, stopped everything else and simply agreed.